So you notice that the man that you've been seeing is starting to pull back. But at first it was so great. Everything was going so good. The sex was great. Communication was great. You didn't see any flaws, no red flags, right? You guys were looking at each other with a sense of rose-colored lenses where everything was perfect. But you're starting to notice him pulling back. And maybe he stopped communicating with you altogether. In today's video, I'm going to be breaking down the real reasons why men pull back after the honeymoon phase, and also how women unintentionally contribute to this pullback. Okay, so it's very important that as I dive into this nuanced topic, that I give accountability on both sides here, because there are things that men do and there are also things that women do. So we need to first talk about and establish guidelines for what the honeymoon phase is. The honeymoon phase is basically an initial period of passion shared between two people. There's a lot of hormones and chemicals and lustful energy in this phase, right? Like I was just saying, in this phase, you guys don't see any flaws. And I've been in this phase before. I know exactly what it feels like. You're so excited. You met this new person. Everything's great. You love them so much. You're starting to love them maybe, or maybe you think that you love them, or this could be the one. You have all of these thoughts and feelings and hormones and emotions flowing, but it's very, very ungrounded. It's very, very unaware because the deeper work hasn't set in yet. The deeper emotional work that requires you to step in fully, you to be vulnerable, you to be transparent, you to communicate in uncomfortable times, you to work through challenges together. None of that stuff has set in yet. This is why it's called the honeymoon phase, because everything is just so great. But there is this huge shift that happens when this phase tampers out. And typically it's around like say 4 to 6 months, I would say on average. That would just be my guess. On average, I'd say around 4 to 6 months, the honeymoon phase starts to taper out. And then all of a sudden, reality hits and you guys start to see each other's flaws. Now, you still may really like this person, you may really care about them deeply, but because this sense of high, this dopamine rush has sense of wore off, you begin to notice each other's flaws. The little things that they start to do annoy you. Maybe their style of communication, maybe how they handle certain things, maybe their wounding, if you will, and your wounding comes to the surface. You know what I'm talking about? The childhood stuff, the abandonment stuff, your fear of rejection, all of these different little things start to come to surface and reality sets in. Have you ever been there before? I'm really curious to know everything that I'm describing right now. Have you ever been there? Maybe you're there right now. If you have been, please put it down in the comments what your situation has been like or is currently like in this sense of pullback and how it feels. Because I can understand that when somebody pulls back from you that you really like and you really care about, it's extremely frustrating. Nobody wants to experience that, man or woman. So the number one reason that we're going to go into, and we're going to break it down into many different reasons. The first reason why men pull back is the excitement has faded. So masculine men are hunters, and they like to pursue and chase things. And sometimes this pursuit can lead to unhealthy things, like the high of chasing money, or the high of gambling, the high of betting on sports, the high of watching sports, the high of pornography, whatever their chase is, their dopamine rush they're after. That's a sense of temporary happiness and fulfillment for them. And sometimes they pour this into relationship with women. And then so they start pursuing this woman. They get the girl. She falls in love with him. He gets her hooked. But then he starts to get scared. And I mean, of course, most men probably would never admit this, but men start to get nervous. They start to think, what am I doing here? Is this really what I want? Is she the right girl? And they really start to realize that they need time. They need to take a step back, which leads me to reason number 2 is him needing space. So after the excitement wears off, men are much more logical creatures, where women, I would say, are more emotional creatures. It's not that one is better than the other, because I can just hear people saying, well, why are men more logical and why are women more emotional? To be honest, that's just what I've observed with the 10 years I've been doing this. Men tend to be more logical. They need things to make sense. It needs to have a sense of logic to it. So in order for him to logically process that, he will sometimes pull back. Maybe his communication is not as strong. Maybe his desire for you is not as strong. And it's on the man really right here to communicate that, hey, I just need some space to think about this. I need to time to think about where this direction is that I want to take this relationship and the path I want to go down. He needs to be communicating here instead of just ghosting and shutting down and completely withdrawing and not communicating, because that's really selfish of a man to do that. But when a man feels that come up and he needs this space, he really should be communicating here, because men, like I said, when they withdraw, they're more logical creatures and they need time to reflect and process how they are feeling, because men, unfortunately, don't really know how to deal with a lot of emotion. They've been taught their entire life that emotions are weak, to not be vulnerable, to not express yourself. So he may feel very uncomfortable here. So he starts to retreat, okay? Which leads me to reason number 3 is his fear of losing freedom. Now, a lot of times when a man gets serious about a woman, and I went through this in my relationship with my wife, is he has this deep-rooted sense of fear of losing his freedom, his independence, if he fully commits to this woman. So if you're going to be in a relationship with a man, you have to understand his masculine nature, that one of the most important things to him, one of the biggest priorities he has, is the sense of being free, whether that's time freedom, financial freedom, space freedom, mental and emotional freedom. He doesn't want to feel like his freedom is being threatened. And sometimes entering into a more serious committed relationship, if a man hasn't emotionally evolved himself, he will look at that as a sense of, this is pulling away from my freedom. I can't do this. So he starts to retreat, he starts to withdraw, he starts to shut down, he starts to pull away. And once again, these are very important things that if a man is experiencing this, he should be communicating. Now, just because he should be communicating doesn't mean that he's going to, because a lot of men tend to be very emotionally avoidant. And when they feel certain things, they don't want to talk about it. That's just how men are hardwired. Where women, if they feel something, they just want to open up and express it because that makes her feel good. Where a man, if he opens up and expresses himself, he may feel like he's being very vulnerable. This could be used against him as a weapon. He may fear that he looks very weak. Okay, so if you're going to be in a relationship with the masculine, you really need to understand his masculine nature. Okay, just because he's pulling back doesn't mean it's the end of the relationship. Now, it could mean that he's just not that into you, but there's going to be some things here in a little bit in this video that I'm going to give you that will help you to better understand how to communicate to him in these times, okay? The fourth reason is the pressure to perform, okay? So men are often very hardwired to think about protecting and providing and leading. And if he's not established, if he's not mature in his masculinity, and he's struggling to do that for himself, then the idea of being in a committed relationship and now having to do that for another person, potentially even down the road, maybe even a family, these things can really overwhelm him. If he's not established and mature in his life right now, then the idea of having to provide, protect, to lead a woman can be very scary and intimidating. Now, that doesn't mean that he's not capable of it, because it's in a masculine nature to do those things. It is a masculine nature, a desire to find a feminine woman, to take care of her, to love her, to cherish her, to provide for her, to protect her, to lead. And this creates a sense of security and safety in the relationship. It actually allows her and enables her femininity to really flourish when she's in a relationship with a man that does these things well. Now, if she's in a relationship with a passive, non-committal, indecisive, flighty son of a bitch, we could even call him, she is not going to thrive in her femininity. In fact, it is going to piss her off, and she's going to feel very unsafe, and she's not going to open. She's going to be very challenging and competitive. Now, of course, we could also throw this in this dynamic as well. She could be acting like that because of old wounds that she has. Maybe she had a very critical, controlling mother and a very passive father, and she adopted those traits of control, of micromanaging, of hovering over him. So when a man withdraws, just to recap these 4 things, number 1, the excitement fades. Number 2 is his need for space to process his emotions and how he's feeling, to really think about this decision, because he understands, hopefully, that choosing a partner, a woman to be with, is the most important decision he will ever make in his life. And he should take time to reflect upon that. Now, once again, he should also be communicating where his mind is at with these things, not just ghosting and shutting down, because it's very immature and it's a very selfish thing to do to people. Okay. So if you're a man, don't do that. It takes a man of integrity to just say, hey, this is where I'm at with this right now. This is how I'm feeling. And I just need some time to process and think about this, just to let you know where my head's at. And that's a very mature response. And a mature feminine woman will say, absolutely, I totally respect that. She will give him the space, where an immature woman, she will chase after him and say, well, why? Why do you need this space? And she'll take it all personally. And it's very threatening when you begin to do that, which leads me into the next aspect of this video, which is how women contribute to, unintentionally, him pulling away, right? You don't want to do these things, okay? So if you're a woman listening right now, now's time for a little bit of accountability on you and how you're showing up. And really, it's going to actually make you more magnetic by understanding these things if you do them correctly, okay? Chasing him, number 1. When a man pulls away, what most women will do is they think, I need to go after him. I need to go figure it out. I need to solve this. I need communication. I need closure. Whatever she thinks that she needs, she starts running after him, sending these long text messages, writing him these long letters. Men don't want that. We don't want to be chased. We don't want to be pursued. Let me be very clear about this. Masculine men don't want that. Feminine men, or even little boys, they think they want to be chased by girls. But it's reversed in nature when that happens. The male does the pursuing. The male does the hunting. And when that is reversed, when the woman stops being magnetic and she starts going after the man, he loses immense respect for her. He loses immense respect for her. So if you're a woman that is chasing and pursuing after him, trying to get him to open up, trying to understand him, you are making a fatal mistake, and you are very likely going to be a huge contributing factor to why your relationship with him is going to end. So instead of chasing after him, you have to really begin to look within yourself and to pull back and stop doing those things. Men do not want to be chased after. Mature masculine men don't want to be chased after. They want to be the one pursuing the relationship. So when the woman starts doing this, it kills the polarity. Number 2, focusing on the relationship too much. You're putting all of your energy into him. You're thinking about him all the time. What he's doing, where he's at, who he's talking to, who he's hanging out with. All of these things, all this energy you're putting into him, it's just amplifying his reasoning for why he's pulling back. You don't want to continue to put all of your energy into the relationship, especially if he's pulling back, because that's putting you in the masculine role of pursuing after him. You have to really understand that you're almost becoming like dependent on him for your source of love and happiness. And what attracted him to you in the first place was you focusing on your own happiness and love and joy. Because there is nothing more attractive to a man than a woman that is truly radiant and fulfilled. Let me say this again. For every woman listening, if your ears are open and receptive to hearing what I'm about to tell you, nothing is more attractive to a masculine man than a woman that is truly embodied in her joy, her pleasure, her overall happiness. That makes her radiant. You dim and dull your radiance when you start pursuing after him. So, focusing too much on the relationship, chasing after him, these are huge detrimental things that will make him lose respect for you. You are the magnet. You are magnetically pulling him into you. This doesn't mean that he's guaranteed to come back. Sometimes he might just not be that into you. But if you imbalance and reverse the polarity by chasing after him, that's not going to help the situation at all. Okay. Number 3 is you're overanalyzing his actions, where a lot of women, what they will do is they will try to figure out and solve what a man is doing, why he is doing it. Like, I need a solution for this. I need to understand him. So either A, you start prying into him. You start, once again, chasing after him, reaching out to him all the time, calling him all the time. These things are very invasive to a man's space. When you become invasive to a man's space, he starts to see you as a threat. He is going to further withdraw when he identifies you as a threat, because you are now compromising his freedom. If you are chasing after him, if you're overanalyzing his actions, trying to figure out everything he does, like, you're like, oh my God, well, he watched my Instagram story today, but he couldn't text me back. Like, these type of, you know what I'm talking about? This type of dialogue that you're going through in your mind, because you're so in your feelings and you're so in your emotions that you're like, I need to figure him out. I need all this right now. That makes you look very desperate. Let me say this again. I know this might be hard to hear, but it makes you appear very desperate to a man. And a man doesn't want to be with a woman who appears desperate and needy. Number 4, using sex to keep him. This is one of the biggest mistakes that women will do, is they think, well, if I just continue to have sex with him and I give him what he wants, then he'll just stick around, right? Won't he just fall in love with me if I just continue to have sex with him? And you use sex as a weapon against him to maintain his interest. But in the reality of things, you're avoiding the deeper issues at hand here, because it's not the sex is why he's going to fall in love with you. A man doesn't fall in love with a woman because he's physically, sexually attracted to her. Yeah, that could be a contributing factor. He wants to be physically and sexually attracted to her. But a man that develops deeper emotional connection with a woman is not because of a physical level connection. So if you're using sex just to keep him around and to keep him interested in you, that's a very manipulative tactic. And once again, if you feel like he has pulled back, then you have to identify that. You have to connect to yourself and your heart and not start chasing after him, not start doing these things to manipulate him to get him back and like you and see you and understand you and hear you. All the things that you want are not going to happen from him by you acting out of character. You have to remember what drew him in the first place. It was your energy. It was your femininity. It was your warmth. It was your love. Hopefully it was these things, right? Hopefully you were really in this place of feeling good about yourself and you drew this man in because you felt so good. Don't forget the reason why he started to pursue you. Hopefully he started to pursue you and you weren't the one pursuing. The reason why he started to pursue you in the first place is because of how feminine you were. You didn't have to do anything, because the feminine isn't about doing. It's more about being. It was just your natural energy that made you magnetic to him. So we need to talk about the balance between accountability and growth here. I'm going to put it first on the men, and then we're going to go to the women. For men, encourage yourself to communicate your feelings instead of withdrawing completely. You already heard me say this before. I'm encouraging you, and encourage yourself to open up, to be honest, to be vulnerable, because one of the most cowardly things that you can do as a man is just completely withdraw and not tell anybody why you did it. I think it takes a brave man to step in and say, this is where I'm at with this right now. I'm really struggling and I need some time to process this. And that's all it needs to be. You don't need to over-explain yourself. Just true accountability and honesty and clear communication is a man of integrity right there. A weak man will withdraw. A weak man will shut down. A weak man will ghost. A weak man will stop communicating. This is what weak, emotionally immature men do. Stop doing that. It is hurtful. It is selfish. And it doesn't help anybody. And it doesn't even help yourself. The next thing, start facing your fears about commitment and why you're avoiding commitment. Is this woman the right woman for you? Why are you afraid of commitment? Why are you afraid to step further in? Why are you pulling back? Really sit with these questions and reflect upon why it is you are showing up the way you are. Did somebody do this to you? Did somebody hurt you? Did somebody abandon you? Did your father do this to your mother? Did your mother not love you the way that you needed to love, so you didn't be loved, so you didn't feel the emotional connection from a woman? And now deep down inside, you don't feel worthy of love from a woman. Take a moment and reflect upon why you are showing up the way you are and being avoidant like this. Now, the next phase for the women. Maintain your own identity and your own interests and your own hobbies outside of the relationship. You have to begin focusing on yourself again. You cannot continue to focus on him and why he is pulled back, why he's doing what he's doing. Because here's the truth. If you do that and you put all your energy into him, he is very likely going to lose respect for you. Sure, he may come back around for a little while, but he might feel forced into it, or he might even feel manipulated into it. If a man leaves and you don't understand why, sure, you could say to him, why have you withdrawn? I noticed that you've been kind of distant lately. What's going on? You could check in with him. But if he is still withdrawing and he's still being cold and he's still being distant, give him space. let me let you in on insight from a masculine psyche here. Don't continue to pursue after him. Just put it out there, communicate to him. Hey, I noticed you've been distant lately. Everything okay? And just be very clear with your questioning. Don't bombard him. Don't overwhelm him, but just check in with him. And he may just say, yeah, I've been, really stressed out lately. I just taking some time to process some things. I'll check back in a few days. And at that point, you just say, okay. Now, if he continues to be cold and distance himself from you, you really just got to say, all right, I understand. And that's his answer through his actions, okay? The next thing is avoid pressuring him for commitment. What a lot of women will do is they will start to think, well, now I got to get him to commit to me because he's withdrawn. He's ghosted me. He's avoidant, right? And then they make all these mistakes, the fatal mistakes right here. They start thinking, well, I got to get him to be committed to me so he doesn't do this to me again. That is the wrong way to approach this, because now you're pressuring him to do something that he's already deeply afraid of. A lot of men have deep fear of commitment in the first place because they think it's going to compromise their freedom, their sexual freedom, their financial freedom, their time freedom. They're going to have to give up all these things, which they don't understand that actual healthy relationship will amplify all those things, just like my wife did with me. When he already feels that fear of commitment, trying to get him to commit to you, whether using sex, your words, manipulative tactics, all of these things will just make him withdraw further. And once again, if he does come back around, it's probably just going to be for convenience to just keep having sex with you or just hanging out with you because he's bored and maybe he's lonely. But you don't want that. You want a man to come back around because he's truly, genuinely interested in you. Okay? Are we clear on this right now? If this is resonating and you still stuck with me this far into the video, I would love for you to drop a comment down below. What has resonated with you the most so far? Okay? The next thing and the last thing is communicate your desires clearly and calmly without any ultimatums. You don't want to say, well, you need to start talking to me or else I'm done with this relationship. You don't want to make threats. You don't want to give him ultimatums. Well, I need to know where we're at with this right now because I can't keep doing this. It's very threatening. It's very demanding. When you make ultimatums, when you make threats, when you make demands, and he's already withdrawn, he's going to withdraw further. So instead of doing that, just clearly and calmly communicate your desires, your needs, and your boundaries. But don't bombard him. Yeah, sometimes women are like, well, I'm going to tell him everything I'm feeling right now. Wrong. Because you're bombarding him. You're giving him every detail of how you're feeling. You're sending those long-ass text messages. Don't do that. Men don't want that. Clearly and calmly communicate your needs to him. What is it that you need? Clearly, calmly communicate your needs. And if he doesn't respond or if he gives you some flighty answer, just give him space. Maybe it's not the right relationship. And you need to just give that relationship space to breathe. You need to give his masculinity and overall mind space to think and process so he can come back. If he does come back and wants to come back, to choose you. You want a man to come back because he wanted to come back, not because he was forced into it, not because he was manipulated into it. You want him to want to choose you. Because if your relationship is going to evolve over time, you'll notice that you want him to continue to pursue you throughout the entire relationship. Okay? I continue to pursue my wife to this day. And she knows exactly what makes me feel good, and I know exactly what makes her feel good. And sometimes we have to work through challenges. Sometimes we have to work through hard, uncomfortable conversations. Sometimes we get frustrated, but it's all within a safe relationship. And you want that type of dynamic, okay? So once again, I appreciate you for listening to this. If you're watching now on YouTube, please put a comment down below and be sure to subscribe. And if you're listening to this on a podcast, I appreciate you being here. And thank you for taking the time to listen to this entire episode with me. As always, stay open, stay grounded, and stay connected to that powerful source within you.